Hi, Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central, and today I'm discussing writing, but particularly something that you should avoid when you're writing a finished product, like a speech or an essay or a book report or something that you're writing for work that needs to be a final product. And a mistake that a lot of people make, and that is to overcomplicate things. You don't need to be overcomplicated in your writing to make it sound intelligent. Intelligence does not mean that the writing is indecipherable to most people. The best writing by the best writers is often very simple, very concise, very plain, and to the point. So, there are times when you want to increase the complexity of your writing, but you need to do it in a more natural way. So what I'm suggesting is that when you're doing a finished product especially, you use the tools that you know and the tools that you're familiar with and you know how to use them. The old adage is write about what you know, and this sort of works for the technical side as well. Use the tools that you know, use the sentence structures that you know, use the paragraph structures that you know and you're comfortable with. Because your main focus should be the goal. Every piece of writing has a goal. If you're writing an essay, you may be defending an argument or proposing your opinion, and you want to make sure that the reader understands what you're suggesting is true. You may be writing something to persuade someone, maybe to visit a scenic site or the most amazing park in the world, something like this. That's your goal, and your goal is to have the reader understand what you're saying and to persuade them, to encourage them to make a change or to do something. Or it may just be informative. You may just be trying to give the reader more information, and you don't do that by overcomplicating it and making it difficult to read. If the reader has too much difficulty reading your work, he or she will probably just give up. For example, if it's a blog and they can't read it because it's too difficult and too complicated and the sentences don't really make sense, they just will quit. They'll just go on to another blog. There's millions to read. So whatever you're writing, you want to make sure that the reader can understand. And even if you're writing to present, to give a speech, so you'll be speaking, you want to make sure that the listener can understand what you're talking about. Otherwise, it's a waste of time, frankly. You don't need to show off you're intelligent. And some students make that mistake, thinking if I go line by line and add a few words from the thesaurus and add some phrases and clauses and make it much, much longer and much more complicated, then it will sound really intelligent. But we don't want it to sound intelligent. We want it to be intelligent. We want it to focus on the goal and achieve that goal. And that doesn't require a lot of complexity. In most cases, you can do it very simply. Now, you may be saying, but how do I improve? How do I become a better writer if I only use the tools I already have? Well, I'm not saying never try to stretch. Of course, you should try to stretch and reach new goals. You're never trying to reach the goal of confusing the reader, however. But you can, increase the length of your sentences and the length of your paragraphs and the complexity of some of the structures you use. Do that while you're doing rough drafts, and do that when you're writing in your journal or you're writing something for yourself more than something for an audience or more than something for a grade in particular, because if you really want the grade, you want the best product you can have. That might not be the time to experiment, but you can experiment with the rough drafts because those can be tweaked and remedied by the time you get to the final draft, and each time you might have introduced a new structure or a few new complex sentences or compound complex sentences, etc. You may have used slightly different formatting for your paragraphs that or a little more elevated than what you're used to using, but you've practiced it ahead of time, or you've practiced it on your own. So those are some areas in which you can practice. You can also take courses, of course, that teach you how to improve your writing and how to make your sentences longer and more complex, but not complicated, not to the point where people can't understand you. You don't want to get to that point. I've actually read some papers by professors who really should have edited a little bit more, I'm sorry to say. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You should try to write in the best style you can, and it can be quite beautiful, and it can be quite long, but it should flow and your ideas should move from one to the other, and the reader should not feel that he or she is running up against a wall trying to understand what you're saying. He or she should feel that he can read it and understand it without too much undue difficulty. Another great way to help with your writing is to use a tutor. Hello, here I am. I had to say that, of course, because I tutor English and I help students of all ages reach their goals in writing and reading and comprehending. And so with a tutor, you can get the feedback you need, you can get a lot of advice and suggestions and examples, and that will help you even more, because writing on your own is great, but you don't always know how to assess your own writing. Although there are a few things you can do. You can read your work aloud. That really helps because you can hear sometimes when there's a mistake. You can have someone else read it either to themselves or out loud, and that way the other person might find some mistakes that you missed, or have some questions at least, or say, this sentence doesn't make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to that person, it probably won't make sense to other readers as well, so that means that sentence likely needs a little work. So there are some tools that you can use outside of courses, outside of having a tutor, but a tutor in particular can give you back excellent feedback that will really help you progress, so that on your next writing assignment or writing article, even if it's a blog for yourself, you can address some of the issues that you had in the last one. And that way you keep moving forward step by step. And then when you have to do a finished product, you're ready to do so in the most complicated way you can, being comfortable with those new tools. So all the way along, when you're doing a finished product, use the tools that you're very comfortable with and you know how to use. I'm going to give you some links below to the website and to some other courses or links so that you can get started correcting your writing or improving your writing and reaching the goals that you want to. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. Stay in touch, subscribe, leave a comment, ask a question. That's free. I can do that here, no problem. And I will see you in the next video next week.